The night was unusually cold in the small white town of Oak Ridge. The streets were empty. The lamps flickered like tired eyes, and the wind whistled as though it carried secrets. Everyone in Oak Ridge knew one place that never slept: Madame Abo's restaurant. It stood at the end of Willow Street, a tall white building with dark red curtains, shining silver doors, and a sign that read in bold letters, "Welcome to Madame Abo's restaurant. Food to die for." People laughed about the slogan, but no one could explain why the restaurant had such a strange charm. Anyone who ate there once would always return, and anyone who worked there never stayed for long. Rumors spread quietly, but never openly. They said Madame Abo's food was too delicious, too addictive. Some whispered she added something extra in her meals. Others claimed the restaurant had a hidden room where strange things happened at night. But no one dared to ask Madame Abo herself. She was a tall, pale woman with long white hair that glistened under the lights. Her eyes were sharp, like knives, and her smile was both sweet and frightening. She spoke softly, yet her voice carried power. She moved with grace, and no one could guess her age. Some thought she was in her 40s. Others swore she was much older. No one knew her past, but everyone feared her presence. The story begins with Daniel, a young journalist who came to Oak Ridge looking for fresh stories. He was tall, curious, and brave, the kind of man who loved uncovering mysteries. He first heard about Madame Abo's restaurant from the townspeople at a local bar. "Don't go there at night," one man warned him. "They say she doesn't just serve food," whispered a woman, glancing around nervously. "What does she serve then?" Daniel asked. The bar went silent. No one answered. That silence was enough to spark Daniel's interest. He decided to visit the restaurant the very next evening. When he arrived, the building seemed alive. The windows glowed, the smell of roasted meat filled the street, and faint laughter echoed inside. Daniel pushed open the silver doors and stepped in. The restaurant was warm, golden, and inviting. Polished tables lined the hall, chandeliers hung above, and every plate looked perfect. The air was thick with spices and herbs. People were eating hungrily, their faces shining with satisfaction, as if they had been starving for days. Madame Abo appeared almost instantly. "Welcome, stranger," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be new in town. Please, sit." Daniel sat near the window, and soon a waitress brought him a plate of roasted chicken with glowing brown skin, steaming vegetables, and bread that looked softer than clouds. The first bite was enough to make him forget himself. The food melted in his mouth, filling his body with warmth and pleasure. It was unlike anything he had ever tasted. He ate faster than he meant to, and before he knew it, the plate was empty. When Madame Abo returned, she looked pleased. "You enjoyed it, didn't you?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded, though part of him felt uneasy. The food was too perfect. No chef could cook like that without a secret. As the night went on, Daniel noticed something strange. The diners around him ate in silence, their eyes glassy, their movements slow, as though they were under some spell. Not a single person spoke. They just ate and ate until their plates were clean, then left quietly without saying a word. Daniel left late that night, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, he returned to the town bar and asked questions. At first, people refused to talk, but after much pressing, an old woman finally spoke. "They say Madame Abo never buys her meat from the market. She has her own supply. Some nights, people go missing in Oak Ridge. Travelers, strangers, even locals. They vanish, and days later, Madame Abo serves new dishes. Think about it, young man. Why do you think her food tastes so good?" Daniel felt his stomach twist. Could it be true? Was the secret ingredient human flesh? He decided to investigate. The following night, he went back to the restaurant, but this time he did not sit in the dining hall. Instead, he pretended to leave and then sneaked around to the back of the building. The kitchen door was locked, but through a small window he could see Madame Abo moving gracefully as she cooked. She was not alone. A large pot boiled on the stove, and next to it was a table covered with knives. On the floor, Daniel thought he saw something that looked like a hand. His heart raced. He pressed closer to the window. Then suddenly, the door behind him creaked open. "Curiosity is dangerous," a soft voice whispered. Daniel spun around. Madame Abo stood there, her white hair shining under the moonlight. Her eyes glowed strangely, and for the first time, Daniel felt real fear. "I was just—" he began, but she raised her hand. "Don't lie. You want to know my secret." Before he could react, she grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. The kitchen smelled of iron and smoke. On the table lay something covered with cloth. Madame Abo pulled the cloth away, and Daniel gasped. It was a body, pale and lifeless, waiting to be cut. His blood froze. You are cooking people?" he whispered. Madame Abo's smile widened. "People are meat. Meat is food, and food is power." She lifted a knife, her eyes flashing. "Do you want to taste the real secret?" Daniel backed away, his mind spinning. He knew he had to escape, but the kitchen door slammed shut, and the waitresses appeared, their faces empty, their eyes dull, as if they were under Madame Abo's control. They moved closer, blocking his way. Panic gripped him, but Daniel was quick. He grabbed a pot of boiling water from the stove and threw it at the waitresses. They screamed, stumbling back, and he used the moment to dash toward the back window. He broke it with his elbow and jumped out, cutting his arm on the glass. He ran through the dark streets, his heart pounding like a drum. He did not stop until he reached the police station. At first, the officers did not believe him, but when he showed them the cut on his arm and insisted they follow him immediately, they finally agreed. That night, the police raided Madame Abo's restaurant. What they found shocked the entire town. Hidden beneath the kitchen was a cold cellar filled with human remains. Bones, clothes, and personal belongings of missing people were piled in corners. Madame Abo was arrested, her calm smile never fading, as though she had expected it all along. When asked why she did it, she said only one thing: "People love what they should fear. They worship what destroys them. I only gave them what they wanted." The town of Oak Ridge was never the same again. The restaurant was closed forever, and the building was left to rot. People no longer spoke of Madame Abo, but her shadow remained in every corner of the town. Daniel wrote the story that shook the world. It was published everywhere, and people gasped at the horrors hidden behind a simple restaurant. But Daniel did not feel victorious. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, he could still hear Madame Abo's voice whispering in his ear, "Food is power." He had escaped, but he would never forget. The lesson of Oak Ridge spread far beyond the town. Not everything that shines is gold, and not every sweetness is pure. Behind beauty can hide evil, and behind comfort can hide danger. And so, Madame Abo's restaurant became a dark legend, a warning passed from one generation to the next. Because sometimes the things we love most can be the things that destroy us. Why don't you share your thoughts on the story? The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.